Breaking now. Something big is happening in Crimea. Ukraine has launched precise strikes. Key Russian targets are hit. Explosions are reported. Military bases are damaged. Radar systems are silent. Russia looks under pressure. The big question is simple. Is Russia losing Crimea? What does this mean for Putin? What does this mean for the war? Stay with us. This story changes everything. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are covering a breaking and extremely important development from the Ukraine-Russia war. Reports suggest that Ukraine has carried out highly precise strikes on key Russian military targets inside Crimea. This has raised a serious and shocking question across global media. Is Russia slowly losing control of Crimea? Crimea has always been one of the most strategic regions for Moscow. It holds military bases, naval ports, airfields, and radar systems that support Russian operations across southern Ukraine and the Black Sea. Any damage to these assets directly impacts Russia's war capability. According to multiple sources, Ukrainian forces targeted infrastructure that supports Russian logistics, surveillance, and command operations. These strikes appear calculated and intentional rather than random. That is why analysts are paying close attention. Precision suggests intelligence accuracy and technological capability. It also sends a psychological message. The message is that no location is completely safe anymore. Russia has repeatedly claimed Crimea is fully secure. These events challenge that narrative. At the same time, Ukraine has not officially confirmed every detail, which is common in wartime strategy. What matters is the effect. Russian air defenses were activated. Explosions were reported. Emergency responses followed. This section sets the stage for understanding why Crimea matters so much and why these strikes are being called a turning point. In the next sections, we will break down what was hit, why it matters, and what could happen next. Crimea is not just another occupied territory. It is the backbone of Russia's military presence in the Black Sea. Since 2014, Russia has transformed Crimea into a heavily fortified military hub. Naval fleets operate from Sevastopol. Fighter jets take off from Crimean air bases. Long-range missiles are stationed across the peninsula. Radar systems monitor large areas of airspace and sea lanes. All of this allows Russia to project power far beyond Crimea itself. Ukraine understands this reality very well. That is why targeting Crimea carries deep strategic meaning. When Ukrainian strikes hit radar systems or ammunition depots, they reduce Russia's ability to detect and respond to attacks. When logistics hubs are damaged, resupply becomes slower and riskier. This creates pressure across the entire southern front. It also forces Russia to divert air defense systems away from other areas. Another key factor is symbolism. Crimea has been presented by the Kremlin as permanently Russian. Any successful strike there challenges that image. It affects morale at home and confidence among Russian forces. For Ukraine, striking Crimea shows capability and resolve. It signals that Ukraine can reach deep behind enemy lines. It also reassures allies that military aid is producing results. Every explosion in Crimea carries military, political, and psychological weight. That is why even limited damage can have outsized consequences. Understanding Crimea's role helps explain why these latest strikes are being discussed worldwide as more than just another attack. Reports indicate that Ukraine used precision-guided weapons rather than mass bombardment. This detail is extremely important. Precision strikes suggest accurate intelligence gathering and careful target selection. They are designed to disable specific systems without unnecessary destruction. In modern warfare, this approach is far more effective. Sources mention possible hits on radar installations, communication centers, and logistical facilities. These are force multipliers. When they fail, entire military networks suffer. Radar loss reduces early warning. Communication disruption causes confusion. Logistics damage slows operations. Russia relies heavily on layered defenses in Crimea. Air defense systems like S-300 and S-400 are meant to intercept incoming threats. The fact that some strikes reportedly succeeded raises questions about defensive gaps. It also suggests Ukraine may be adapting tactics to bypass these systems. Another factor is timing. These strikes come amid intensified fighting across multiple fronts. Ukraine may be shaping the battlefield for future operations. By weakening Crimea, Ukraine could reduce pressure elsewhere. Russia must respond. That response could involve redeploying assets, reinforcing defenses, or escalating attacks. Each option carries costs. The international reaction also matters. Allies are watching closely to evaluate effectiveness of supplied weapons. Opponents are measuring escalation risks. Precision strikes blur lines between tactical actions and strategic shifts. Even without official confirmations, the pattern is clear. Crimea is no longer untouchable. That realization alone alters calculations on both sides. In war, perception often matters as much as physical damage. These strikes changed perceptions. From Moscow's perspective, Crimea has always been a red line. Russian leadership has invested enormous political capital in holding the peninsula. Losing credibility over Crimea would be damaging internally. State media has long portrayed it as secure and fully integrated. Any sign of vulnerability undermines that narrative. This is why official Russian responses often minimize damage or deny impact. However, emergency measures tell another story. Flight suspensions, evacuations, and air defense alerts indicate serious concern. Militarily, Russia now faces difficult choices. Strengthening Crimea means pulling resources from other fronts. Leaving it exposed risks further strikes. Neither option is ideal. There is also the question of escalation. Russia could attempt heavier retaliation. That carries international consequences. Ukraine, on the other hand, frames its actions as legitimate defense. Crimea is internationally recognized as Ukrainian territory. From that view, strikes there are lawful military actions. This legal framing matters for continued Western support. Another layer is domestic Ukrainian morale. Successful operations in Crimea boost confidence and unity. They show progress after long months of grinding warfare. For Russian soldiers stationed there, morale could drop. Constant alerts and uncertainty take a toll. War is not only about territory. It is about endurance. These strikes test Russia's ability to sustain control under pressure. They also test Ukraine's ability to maintain momentum. The outcome depends on follow-up actions and responses. What is clear is that Crimea is now an active battlefield again. International reactions to the strikes have been cautious but attentive. Western officials rarely comment on specific operations. Instead, they emphasize Ukraine's right to self-defense. Analysts, however, speak more freely. Many describe the strikes as evidence of Ukraine's growing operational reach. They note improvements in coordination, intelligence, and weapon integration. Some point to domestically produced drones and missiles. Others highlight Western-supplied systems used creatively. Regardless of the tools, the effect is undeniable. Russia must now defend a wider area more intensively. This stretches resources. It also complicates planning. For NATO countries, this reinforces the idea that supporting Ukraine yields tangible results. At the same time, there is concern about escalation. Crimea holds symbolic value for Russia. Increased strikes could provoke stronger responses. Balancing pressure without triggering uncontrolled escalation is delicate. Media narratives also shape public understanding. Headlines questioning Russia's grip on Crimea attract attention. They influence perceptions even if territorial control has not changed. This perception battle is part of modern conflict. Ukraine appears increasingly skilled at it. Russia struggles to control information in the digital age. Videos, satellite images, and eyewitness reports circulate quickly. Denials are harder to sustain. Each new strike brings renewed scrutiny. Over time, this erodes claims of absolute control. Whether Crimea is truly at risk of changing hands remains uncertain. What is certain is that its security environment has fundamentally changed. That alone marks a strategic shift with long-term implications for the war. To understand whether Russia is losing Crimea, we must define what losing means. It does not necessarily mean immediate withdrawal. Loss can be gradual. It can mean reduced freedom of movement. It can mean constant threat. It can mean rising costs of occupation. By these measures, Russia faces increasing challenges. Maintaining control requires resources, manpower, and stability. Each successful Ukrainian strike increases strain. Air defenses must remain active. Troops must stay on high alert. Supply routes must be protected. Over time, this degrades effectiveness. Ukraine may not need to capture Crimea soon to achieve strategic benefit. Making it untenable could be enough. History shows that sustained pressure can force change without dramatic offensives. Russia's advantage lies in numbers and depth. Ukraine's advantage lies in adaptability and precision. The clash of these approaches defines the current phase of war. Crimea sits at the center of this contest. For civilians living there, uncertainty grows. Security measures increase. Daily life becomes militarized. This affects local sentiment. While public opinion is hard to measure under occupation, it matters long-term. International law remains clear. Crimea is Ukraine. That legal reality supports continued Ukrainian operations. Ultimately, whether Russia loses Crimea depends on persistence. One strike does not decide outcomes. Patterns do. And the pattern suggests Ukraine is steadily expanding its reach. That alone forces Russia into a defensive posture. In warfare, defense often signals vulnerability. Another important aspect is technology. Modern conflicts are shaped by innovation. Ukraine has shown remarkable creativity. From naval drones to long-range strike systems, it continues to adapt. Crimea's geography once favored Russia. Narrow access points and strong defenses made it appear secure. Technology is changing that equation. Drones can approach from unexpected directions. Missiles can fly low and evade radar. Cyber operations can disrupt communications. Each layer adds complexity. Russia must counter all simultaneously. That is difficult. Defense systems are not unlimited. They require maintenance, ammunition, and trained crews. Sustained pressure reveals weaknesses. Ukraine appears to exploit these gaps selectively. This avoids waste and maximizes impact. For Russia, responding effectively requires constant upgrades. Sanctions complicate that effort. Access to advanced components is restricted. This creates long-term disadvantages. Technology also affects perception. Videos of successful strikes spread quickly. They shape narratives. They influence international opinion. They motivate supporters. They discourage opponents. In this sense, technology is both a weapon and a message. Crimea's role as a showcase of Russian control is fading. Instead, it becomes a demonstration of contested space. That shift matters strategically. Once an area is contested, resources must flow there continuously. That drains strength elsewhere. Ukraine may be counting on this cumulative effect. Each precise strike is a small push. Over time, many pushes can move even the strongest position. This gradual approach defines Ukraine's current strategy around Crimea. We should also consider the regional impact. Crimea affects the entire Black Sea region. Russian control allows naval operations that influence trade, security, and energy routes. When Crimea is threatened, these operations become riskier. Ukraine has already demonstrated ability to hit naval assets. This has reduced Russian naval presence in certain areas. Insurance costs rise. Shipping patterns change. Regional states watch closely. Countries like Turkey, Romania, and Bulgaria have direct interests in Black Sea stability. Any shift in control dynamics affects them. This adds diplomatic pressure. Russia must balance military responses with regional relations. Ukraine gains leverage by shaping this environment. Each successful strike subtly alters calculations. Allies may feel emboldened. Neutral actors may reassess risks. Over time, this influences negotiations and alliances. Crimea thus has significance beyond Ukraine and Russia. It sits at a crossroads of regional power. Losing freedom of action there weakens Russia's broader position. That is why even limited Ukrainian operations matter. They send signals to multiple audiences. To Russia, they signal vulnerability. To allies, they signal progress. To neutrals, they signal change. This multi-layered impact amplifies each strike's importance. War is not fought only on battlefields. It is fought in perceptions and decisions. Crimea is now central to all three. Understanding this helps explain why headlines question Russia's grip. The question resonates because the implications extend far beyond the peninsula itself. Looking ahead, several scenarios are possible. Ukraine could continue periodic precision strikes. This would maintain pressure without provoking massive escalation. Russia could adapt defenses, reducing effectiveness. Or Russia could escalate elsewhere to deter further attacks. Each path carries risks. Ukraine must balance ambition with sustainability. Precision weapons are valuable and limited. Russia must manage overstretch. Defending everything equally is impossible. Prioritization becomes necessary. Mistakes become more costly. The coming months will reveal trends. Frequency of strikes matters. Russian responses matter. International reactions matter. One thing is clear. Crimea will remain a focal point. It cannot return to quiet isolation. That era is over. For observers, it is important to separate hype from reality. Headlines exaggerate. Facts emerge slowly. But underlying dynamics are shifting. Ukraine is demonstrating reach. Russia is demonstrating concern. That combination is significant. Whether this leads to eventual liberation or prolonged contest remains unknown. Wars rarely follow straight lines. They evolve. Crimea's evolving role suggests Ukraine is shaping the conflict rather than merely reacting. That alone is noteworthy. It changes bargaining positions. It affects morale. It influences support. In strategic terms, initiative matters. Right now, Ukraine appears to be seizing initiative around Crimea. Maintaining it will be challenging, but the precedent is set. Crimea is no longer a sanctuary. That realization may prove one of the most important outcomes of these strikes, regardless of future territorial changes. As we conclude, it is important to return to the central question. Is Russia losing Crimea? The honest answer is not yet in a traditional sense. Russian forces remain. Administration remains. Control remains. But control is increasingly contested. Security is increasingly fragile. Costs are increasing. In modern warfare, that trajectory matters. Ukraine's precision strikes show capability, intent, and patience. They are not about dramatic headlines alone. They are about gradual pressure. Russia's responses show concern, adaptation, and uncertainty. That combination defines a contested space. Crimea has moved from secure rear area to active front. That shift alone is significant. It alters planning on both sides. For Ukraine, it opens options. For Russia, it creates obligations. The future will depend on persistence, resources, and international dynamics. Observers should watch patterns, not isolated events. Precision today suggests more tomorrow. Defense today suggests vulnerability tomorrow. The situation remains fluid, but one thing is clear. The question itself is no longer unthinkable. Asking whether Russia is losing Crimea would once have seemed unrealistic. Today it is discussed seriously. That change reflects deeper shifts in the war. We will continue monitoring developments closely. This story is far from over. Every new report adds another piece to the puzzle. Stay informed, stay critical, and remember that in war narratives evolve quickly but facts matter most. If you found this analysis helpful, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and turn on notifications for breaking updates.